Hey guys, it's Landon Blake with taught-by-a-surveyor.org. In this video, we're going to teach you about the Pythagorean theorem. Okay, it's just a rule that we can use to solve problems with right triangles. Remember, I told you land surveyors love right triangles, great love of our life. Okay, so it's got kind of a funny name, this rule, Pythagorean theorem. It was named after a Greek mathematician, Pythagoras. Okay, so he gets the credit for coming up with this rule, but more than likely, this same rule was discovered earlier in history in both China and Babylon. So it wasn't just the Greek guy that figured it out. And there's also a possibility that Pythagoras, actually took credit for something one of his students figured out. We're not sure about that, but he gets the credit. But just keep in mind, he could have been a scoundrel, and there were some other smart people in different parts of the world that also figured this out. But that's the name we use, Pythagorean theorem. Okay, and it's a rule that has to do with the relationships of the sides of a right triangle. So just to review, a right triangle is a triangle where one of the angles is 90 degrees. Okay, that's how we show that little square there. Okay, that's a right triangle. Okay, and here's what the Pythagorean theorem says. It says the squares of the two shorter sides of a triangle, right triangle, will equal the square of the longer side. Okay, so here's how we write that in algebra. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. That's how you'll usually see it written. Okay, these letters could change. It doesn't matter. You could say X squared plus Y squared equals R squared. Okay, so the letters don't matter, but in this case, A is one small side, B is the other small side of the triangle, short side, and C is the hypotenuse. Okay. So that's the formula. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Okay. Now, if you want to, you could rewrite that formula to solve for the different sides. So if you wanted to solve for A, for example, so A squared is going to be equals to C squared minus B squared. Okay, and B squared is equal to C squared minus A squared. Okay, so you can rewrite the formula like that to solve for the different sides. Okay. All right, so if we're going to draw this graph, I'm going to draw this graphically, and then we're going to actually use some algebra to actually solve some problems with the Pythagorean theorem, some right triangle problems. Okay, so, but let's draw a little picture, just so you can see what this means graphically. Okay. So graphically, what this means is, if I have a little right triangle here, okay, if I take the two small sides of the triangle and I square them like this, okay, so I just make them sides in a square, okay, and I figure out what this area is of these two squares. When you add them up, it'll be the area of the long side of the triangle. Okay, so if this is 3 units and this is 4 units, okay, this is a 3, 4, 5 triangle. Okay, so 3 by 3, that area is 9 units. 4 by 4, that area is 16 units. Okay, 5 by 5, that is 25 units. Okay, 9 plus 16 is 25. You can see that the theorem works. Okay, so that's graphically what the Pythagorean theorem expresses. All right, so that's all fun and games, Landon, right? That's what you're probably thinking. Why do I care? Okay, we care because we can use this theorem to solve problems, right triangle problems. Now, we can do the same thing with trig, but it's actually easier. If you can solve the problem with Pythagorean theorem, it's actually easier probably than using trig. Okay, so let's just look at a couple examples. So we're going to look at an example where we are given the two short sides of the triangle and we want to find the long side. Okay, so we're going to say this side is 100 feet long and this side is 50 feet long, and I want to know how long is the hypotenuse. Okay, so we're trying to solve for C squared. So remember now, we're trying to solve for C. Sorry, this is A, B, and C. So we're trying to solve for C. Okay, so remember our formula is C squared equals A squared plus B squared. Okay, but we don't want C squared, we want C. So we got to rewrite this formula using our square root tool. Something I taught you guys about before. Sorry, that blue isn't coming in very good. Okay, so in order to get c by itself, we got to take the square root of c squared. Okay, but if we do it to this side of the equal sign, the left side, we got to do it over here to the right side. So we got to take the square root of a squared plus b squared. Okay. Okay, and if you simplify this, you get c equals the square root of a squared plus b squared. So we got to do some squaring and some square roots. Okay, so let's just work this math. Okay, so we plug in a, this is what we get. Okay, we get c equals the square root of 100 times 100, okay, plus 50 times 50. Now you got to square first. You got to square a and b first. Okay, this is going to make my brain hurt. I think that's 10,000. Right, and that is 2,500, I believe. Okay. Okay, so c is equal to the square root of 10,000 plus 2,500. Okay, so if we do that math, let me do this math on my calculator real quick. Okay, so we get, the answer is 111.80. 111.80. Now, just as a way to check that, you want to say, hey, is my answer longer than my other two sides? It is. Check. Check. Okay. So that's how Pythagorean theorem works. We just solve for the hypotenuse given the two short sides of the triangle. You got to know your algebra to be able to use this, right? So if you don't, go back and watch my algebra videos. Okay, now we're going to work the other kind of problem, Pythagorean theorem problem, where you get the hypotenuse and you're trying to solve for one of the short sides. Okay, it's a little bit different, but I just want to show you that math, kind of same rough process. Okay, so now we're going to start with these two sides, and we're going to say we want to solve for this side. Okay, now we already know what's missing over here, but we're going to see if we get close to the right answer by doing the algebra. Okay, so you remember Pythagorean theorem is c squared equals a squared plus b squared, right? Okay, and this time we have c and a, and we're trying to solve for b, side b. Okay, so we want to solve for b, so we could do that by saying b squared equals, how do we get b by itself? Okay, we got to subtract a2, so b squared equals c squared minus a squared. Okay, but we don't want b squared, we want the square root of b squared, we want just b, so square root of b squared is equal to the square root of c squared minus a squared. Notice I have all this under the square root sign, so you got to do this math first. Okay, if we simplify, that's going to give us b equals the square root of c squared minus a squared. Okay, let's do that math. Okay, so we're going to get side b, okay, is equal to the square root of 111.80 squared plus 100 squared. Okay, so we'll do that math. We're going to square these two, add them together. Take the square root of that. That should give us b. So let me go do that on my calculator. Okay. All right, I'm doing something wrong with my math. Oh, I'm adding and I should be subtracting. All right, so when you do that math, right, so be careful here, right? I actually messed this up. I wrote it as a plus. It's not, it's a minus. Don't do that. Don't make that mistake. All right, it'll give you the wrong answer. All right, so when I plug that in as a minus, okay, I get 49.99 as my answer. Okay, so if we round that up, we get to 50, which we know was the original answer. Okay, so Pythagorean theorem is just this rule. Okay, again, the rule is c squared equals a squared plus b squared. Okay, the longest side of the triangle squared is equal to the two shortest sides of the triangle squared and added together. Okay, you can use your algebra rules, right? Your algebra tools that we talked about in the other videos then to solve for any, if you have any two sides of a right triangle, you can solve for the missing side, whether it's one of the two short sides or the hypotenuse, it doesn't matter. You can figure it out. Very powerful tool. Surveyors use it all the time. Okay, so you need to know it. You need to practice it. You need to preach it. You need to sleep it. Okay, definitely a very valuable tool in geometry and also in trigonometry, and surveyors use it all the time. Pythagorean theorem. Pythagoras, the scoundrel that possibly stole credit for the formula. All right, so there you go. What I'll probably do another video where I maybe work some word problems with Pythagorean theorem, just so you guys can see how that works, and then maybe we'll do some right triangle word problems in the same video. I'm not sure yet, but there you go. That's Pythagorean theorem in a nutshell. If I can find some other videos that teach about the theorem here on YouTube, I'll try and link to those in the description. I'm sure there's some folks that have done a better job, but I wanted to cover that for you guys. So appreciate you tuning in to this episode of Taught by a Surveyor, and I hope to catch you on the next video.